Rocha a couple of really sharp submissions of the day. Saldanha, I believe, hasn't taken the mat today, but he did hit harder than yesterday.
And representing Alliance, Pedro Rocha.
Pedro Rocha and Thiago Saldanha taking the mats. Saldanha looking to pull guard early. Kendall, this has been the story of the heavyweight division, right? Athletes facing Pedro Rocha need to be very aware not to lower their head below Pedro's head. Yep. He's going to try and bait them to do it. He's going to try and taunt them to do it. He will do everything he can to make somebody lower his head, including just jump over the head.
Including flying guillotines, right? He's awarded 2 points here for his efforts as well, so he's going to lead this match with 2 points now. Saldanha looking unfazed here with that opening 2-point flurry. Being really patient and cautious as well. And very insistent on playing in this seated guard position, while Rocha is very, very insistent clearly on putting Saldanha onto his back into a supine guard. Really, really changes the offense of the bottom player.
And Rocha likes passing from the feet, especially in it from a distance like this. But passing standing like this is going to leave his legs a little bit exposed. Saldanha, a good leg locker. He has plenty of leg lock finishes this year, so Rocha's going to have to be careful about the way he engages forward.
Jumping forward with his legs. Is Saldanha really, really looking for these entries.
And this is strategic for Pedro Rocha. Rocha wants to make Saldanha reach for an underhook, reach for a leg, reach for something that makes his arm extended on one side and his neck open on the other side. That's all it takes for Pedro Rocha to start playing the game that he is so good at playing, his front headlock game, as we talked about earlier today. Yep. Second to few. Perhaps second to none.
He loves the wrestle-up game. Right? He thrives in the wrestle-up game. We saw that in some of his previous matches as well. Because even if his submissions don't open up, he always seems confident phasing or, I don't want to say that, defending, I would say, the wrestle-up attacks into a neutral stand-up position. So then he gets back to his feet where he likes to be anyway.
And that's why he'll play in the upright position from a distance before he's engaged the guard. Is he wants the bottom player to wrestle up. He wants the bottom player to bring their head closer to his arms, to his guillotine. But in lieu of that, he'll stay here in this low position, giving away underhooks, baiting anything that requires the bottom player to post up on an elbow, to reach with their arm, to reach with their neck. Saldanha obviously cautious of that. Being careful about the way he sets up. Using this arm drag is a good way to negate a lot of those attacks.
Again, staying with this outside passing game is Rocha. I agree, Corey. I think he is trying to bait Saldanha to come forward with his head more. You now see, like, I Rocha almost wrestles from the passing position. Look at that inside tie on the right hand, the head-to-head pressure, the exchange to the left. Really, really approaches it like takedowns. But now we see some big side-to-side pressure here from Rocha, and he is turning it up.
Great acceleration. And he's going to use the dump over. He is going to at least score the advantage here. Nearly gets the pass, but instead starts chasing the back. This goes out of bounds. Going to be interesting to see how they score that. At least an advantage for the near pass, an advantage for the near back take.
That was an incredible flurry of movement. And not only is it great to add those advantages to the scoreboard, but now it's like when we talk about pattern building in matches, he knows where the pathway to the pass is, where he wasn't seeming to be able to find it before. Although Saldanha says, I think I'm gonna hang out on the feet. After that, maybe that's not the path I want to take.
Well, that's the interesting thing about the way that Pedro passes, right? Is he's not really close enough that the guard player can do much to set up a guard. He wants to stay at that distance where he can apply passing pressure and pushing pressure and hand fighting pressure so that the guard player sits up. But if the guard player doesn't sit up, Pedro will eventually just hit the gas and start passing side to side until he makes an opening. So it's exactly what we look for in a double threat, right? He can either set up the guillotine or he can just force a pass. It's about creating those patterns to make his opponent scared. Hesitant at the very least. And
big double leg there from Pedro.
Big double puts Pedro on top. Takes
and
two.
Right back up is Saldanha. Like the referee is waiting to hear a final call from the outside referees about whether or not there was a grip.
No grip was made. Saldanha is going to receive a penalty for pulling without a grip, giving Rocha another advantage.
Very interesting play by Saldanha, considering he had been taken down and could have just stayed on bottom and continued to play guard.
And that indecisiveness, right? The being taken down, standing back up, and then pulling guard again ultimately resulted in a penalty.
Right.
And that's the kind of rattling that Pedro Rocha can do, is he can make you second guess where you want to play, and it ends up actually having a benefit on the scoreboard.
And we may see some attention on Pedro's distance play here if the referee decides that he's playing the outside a little bit too much. But that time Saldanha's pull ruled as a normal pull with the grip. And he has 4 minutes left. So if we look at possible pathways, right, we have to consider that a submission is going to be high on his radar, right, because a sweep is not going to do very much. Even a back take, he would have to sweep and then pass to get ahead on the scoreboard. So I think it's definitely safe to say he's going to be looking for a submission finish in the last 3.5 minutes.
And ultimately what that means is that Saldanha is going to have to close that range between his hands and Pedro's legs, which is, I'm sure, all that Pedro is hoping for Saldanha to try and close that big space between them. You see the space between their knees, the space between their hips. That's the space that Pedro is constantly baiting Saldanha to take. And that if Saldanha wants to make anything happen, he's going to have to take that risk.
You know, and I think it's worth pointing out a big, big difference in psychology here, the way that these gentlemen are displaying their body language. What just happened right now in the break is Saldanha looked visibly frustrated, kind of shaking his head, making a face. And I think it's because of the physicality of Pedro and honestly probably getting a little bit frustrated at Pedro's distance game. You can kind of see him right now throwing his hands up, maybe wondering why Pedro's not coming into his guard more, getting annoyed with the shoving. But allowing that to physically show up, and then when we look at the center of the mat on the reset, Pedro, on the other hand, is jumping around, looking pumped, ready to go. He's in it. That right there can be the difference between two gentlemen who the match could go either way with, to now making a huge turn in the direction of Pedro on this big pass attempt.
And once again, Saldanha does enough. This looks so similar to what happened just right over here a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah, that was a very interesting chain of events. Pedro Rocha had a front headlock. Look as he's running back into the middle, ready to go. He had a front headlock, and we saw Saldanha really back up hard out of bounds. And then right after the referee said stop, I believe, is when Rocha jumped up onto the closed guard guillotine.
So Pedro nearly passes the guard. Saldanha turtles up. Pedro looks to take the back, and as Saldanha goes to defend the back control, Pedro jumps on a guillotine. All of this happens out of bounds, so we get an additional advantage for Pedro, but nothing more.
And again, I think the difference in mentality here is really where it's going to make a difference. Pedro Rocha with the head and the wrist control. A lot of shoving to try to get Saldanha to play a supine guard, but this is completely legal in IBJJF, right? We are allowed to shove opponents down to try to put their back on the mat.
Wow.
And that, I believe, is the third time we've seen that, but the first time into the guillotine that it looks close to finishing.
And
he gets the tap,
he gets the submission
guillotine in the finals to win the medium heavyweight title.
Pedro Rocha on that stack pass flip over is one of the best I've ever seen at tossing his opponent upside down. And Pedro Rocha gets his hand raised, the heavyweight champion.